And those in D.C. who try to divide us up and break us apart, I can tell you right now, in Illinois, with these groups of people, with all of us, we are the firewall that protect our communities. So the fight that we have here in Springfield, in D.C., in Chicago, is that we must stand together, and we can't let no mother take that away from us.
That's just some of a rally that happened last week with immigrant advocates where State Senator Robert Peters got up to use some expletives. Well, if you go to thecentersquare.com and check out the Illinois page, you will see this headline of national group says about 700,000 ICE arrest warrants issued nationwide. So go get that story, and we'll be talking about it here now with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday as we break down what's going on in the state of Illinois. Now, the latest with the court case that the Department of Justice has against the state of Illinois over its sanctuary state policies that say local and state law enforcement cannot cooperate with federal immigration authorities in a lot of cases when it comes to immigration detention orders. Well, if you recall, when Pam Bondi was sworn in as the new U.S. Attorney General, one of the first things she did was file a lawsuit against the state of Illinois, against the city of Chicago, against Cook County and the elected officials therein, including Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Governor J.B. Pritzker and Tony Preckwinkle, the president of the Cook County Board, over the state's sanctuary policies. Bondi also went ahead and ordered the withholding of any DOJ grants to sanctuary city places. So that lawsuit was filed last month, right? A few days after, I think actually it was the day of that Pam Bondi was actually sworn in. The latest in this case, we'll be tracking this for you. It's in federal court. You had on Friday a motion by J.B. Pritzker, governor of the state of Illinois, to set a briefing schedule for the defendant's forthcoming motions to dismiss for leave to file oversized briefs. So they're asking that they can file briefs for a motion to dismiss the case in federal court. And then you have a minute entry by the judge, Lindsey Jenkins is the federal judge in this case. The motion for an extension for excess pages is granted, they ordered. The court imposes the following agreed briefing schedule on the motions to dismiss. The state, city, and county defendants each have until March 4th. That's tomorrow. They have until March 4th to file any type of rule motion. The government's response is due by April 1st. So the state government, this is interesting because you got the federal government going against the state government in court, right? Pam Bondi, DOJ, US DOJ from the federal government suing the state of Illinois, Cook County, and Chicago. So Cook County, the state, the city, they have until March 4th, tomorrow, to file a motion for rules, and then the federal government's response is due by April 1st. Any replies are due by April 29th. So we're starting to see this case, it could start, heating up, right? And this is all about the state's sanctuary policies. So while that's being dealt with in court, you have the issue of Illinois sanctuary policies impacting how law enforcement are able to actually do their job. I got a tip from a listener who said that they were made aware the National Sheriff's Association put out a note about how nationwide there are 700,000 detention orders that have been issued. 700,000. And what exactly that means for Illinois? Well, I contacted the Illinois Sheriff's Association Executive Director Jim Kaitschuk and asked him about this memo that went out from the National Sheriff's Association, and here's what he had to say.
What they indicated to all the states was, so this wasn't specific to Illinois by any stretch of the imagination, and it actually, in spite of the fact that we can't do any detainers in Illinois, we were just more copied on the message indicating that they'd put in 700,000 ICE administrative arrest warrants. And really what that means is they're civil detainers. So as you know, under the Illinois Trust Act, or more specifically under the Way Forward, there was a provision, in that change to say specifically that Illinois law enforcement is precluded and prohibited from participating in any activity that's solely related to civil enforcement. Now, we can obviously continue to participate in things that are criminal in nature, as we do every day, but anything in terms of being able to hold somebody up to an additional 48 hours, which is what these detainers indicate, we can't do that anymore, nor can we contact ICE if, in fact, we have somebody and we see that. So for us, it was more informational, but it really doesn't change anything that we're doing based on, the prohibition under the Trust Act.
So again, state law, as Kaitschuk points out there, says that local and state police are not allowed to cooperate with federal immigration authorities if it's just a civil order for detainment of an illegal immigrant. They can work with federal officials if there's another crime associated with it. So that's kind of the defining line here as to the state's ultimate sanctuary state policies, right? This is statewide. It's not just Chicago, not just Cook County. Hence the reason why you've got the U.S. DOJ suing the state of Illinois. We'll be tracking that case closely. But, the particulars about the law aside, what does it mean practically for law enforcement on the ground? Are there serious safety implications here for, say, law enforcement can't cooperate with ICE? ICE isn't even contacting local law enforcement, and then they go to somebody's house and, something goes wrong. Who knows? That leaves law enforcement kind of going into things not knowing what's up without their eyes wide open.
Well, I mean, it's frustrating, certainly, because, we want the primary goal for everybody that's in law enforcement, and, certainly specifically for sheriffs, is, they are tasked with and elected to keep their communities safe. And when you see something like that happen, we really haven't had communication from ICE if they're out doing that. And what we get a lot of times is, hey, they call the sheriff's office or they call dispatch and say, what's going on here? And we really don't have any knowledge of what is occurring at that point in time. So it's frustrating because if something, more happens or could go wrong, unfortunately things do go wrong, right? And then we're in a situation where we may not know anything about what's occurring. So we're kind of blind in some of those cases.
So clearly, you've got law enforcement with ongoing concerns of how they are able to be kept up to what's happening in their own communities when federal officials come into the community. You had Omar Aquino, a state senator who last week was in front of immigration advocates talking about, the taxpayer subsidies for non-citizen migrants that he championed and supported. He also talked about how they're going to stand up to anybody who comes in and tries to break up families, for instance.
I am proud to stand with these champions behind me and all these champions all in front of me right here, who are going to make sure that we say more than ever that this is a time that the state of Illinois stands up and says that we love immigrant families, that they are our family, that you are not going to come into our house and just try to take people and separate families in this state.
Not here.
People have rights. They are called human rights. I don't care if you're the jockey or not. And when you are complaining as a federal government that you are being informed of your rights and that you can't be separated that easily because we ain't no fools, then tough luck. Because here in the state of Illinois, we stand up for all immigrants. And we are going to continue to fight together.
So again, stand up for all immigrants, legal or not, I think I heard him say. And, he says they can't come into our house and separate our families. So that's the mindset of the state's sanctuary state policies and the supporters of said policies. This whole idea of going into homes and quote unquote breaking families up. The Sheriff's Association here in Illinois points out, well, if federal immigration authorities can't work with local and state law enforcement, and also if local and state law enforcement can't even get the immigration status from the suspect while they have them in custody, even at a local jail, then federal immigration authorities have no other choice but to go to a suspected illegal immigrant's home and detain them. And that causes serious problems. Here's Jim Kaitschuk from the Illinois Sheriff's Association.
Well, I mean, I think that, what we've seen in some cases, and I, we obviously historically, we opposed, the changes as they were made to the Trust Act, the past several changes that occurred. And, have been, preached at that point in time, this could cause us issues and would cause us problems when we don't know what's going on. And from a safety perspective, it does create issues, because previously, we might very well have had people that were in our custody. ICE would have been paying attention to those kind of things and could come to the jail and take them at that point in time upon their release. Now, mind you, those are already people that are in our custody at that point in time. Now what we have is we don't have that ability, so ICE may or may not know that they're coming into our facility. Well, they wouldn't know unless, I don't know how they would figure it out, but they have the ability now where they can't do that with the jail, and they're having to go to people's houses. And at that point in time, the problem then is that you may be subjecting people then that weren't involved in any other criminal activity other than being here, not legally, and open them up to being subjected to ICE at that point in time in that residence, as opposed to if they were in the jail where they wouldn't have been.
So if you follow that,
so certainly extensive more safety concerns.
Yeah, if you follow that, Kaitschuk saying that, listen, by state law, not even allowing for local law enforcement to ask the immigration status of a criminal suspect so that they can notify ICE that they've got an illegal immigrant suspect in their custody, come get them. You can't even do that in Illinois. So if they have them in jail and then they turn around and let them out, that individual goes back to a home. ICE has an idea of where they're at, and then all of a sudden you get a more contentious rounding up of sorts and detention efforts. But listen, there's all kinds of other things in Illinois' sanctuary status that include not just prohibiting law enforcement from cooperating with immigration officials, but also from prohibiting law enforcement from allowing their jail beds to be used temporarily by ICE to house these individuals. More from Jim Kaitschuk on that issue.
Correct. So back before the Way Forward Act, we had a couple of Illinois jails that were specifically had contracted with ICE to house detainees and before they would be removed from the country. And after that law became effective, those agencies that had to completely shut that off. And so where those folks are now in terms of the ICE detainees, they're in surrounding states, like Wisconsin has several, Indiana does as well. So they're just housing them there. It didn't stop it. It just moved them out of Illinois. But in terms of the Way Forward Act, some of the other challenges from a rank and file law enforcement officer that's on the street, they're not even in a position where they can ask somebody's country of origin. So when you're trying to figure out, where somebody's from, to try to establish a dialogue with them, let's say it's on a traffic stop, and you don't really have much ability to ask questions because of some of the prohibitions that were included in that last change.
Again, so much about this that is fascinating and has serious implications for law enforcement. So we'll be watching this closely here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I appreciate Jim Kaitschuk taking a moment to discuss this further, but will we see any change to it? Will we have the federal law enforcement through the DOJ in this lawsuit actually bring about some change? How all this is going to play out, we'll do it and keep you updated here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily.